Felix Rodriguez shows me around his Miami, Florida home, adorned with photos and mementos chronicling a lifetime fighting communism. I had never seen anything like it, but then I had never met anyone quite like Felix Rodriguez. Rodriguez is one of the CIA's most extraordinary agents, having infiltrated into Cuba 6 weeks before the Bay of Pigs invasion. He also trained anti-guerrilla forces in Vietnam, where he was shot down 5 times in 300 helicopter sorties, and helped the El Salvadorian government in its battle against communist guerrillas. Rodriguez was also a major figure in the American support of the Nicaraguan Contras, and his claims that they were being poorly equipped were ultimately proved correct during the congressional Iran-Contra hearings. And tell us what this is again?
Inside here is the ashes of Che Guevara's pipe.
Rodriguez shows me his gun bearing the ashes from the last pipe of Argentine Marxist revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara. It is the circumstances surrounding how he came to obtain these, for which he is perhaps best known, orchestrating the capture of Che, a man who, alongside Fidel Castro, overthrew Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista in the late 1950s and was bent on exporting the Cuban-style revolution to Africa and South America. After his revolt in the African Congo failed, Che set his sights on Bolivia. And so when the Bolivian government turned to the U.S. for help, the CIA turned to the then 26-year-old Felix Rodriguez.
They actually came down to Miami, interviewed 16 Cubans, and they selected 2 of us. It was very challenging when they mentioned that Che Guevara was there.
Did you get the sense at any point that Nixon and his administration were big supporters of the effort to hunt down Che? Were they behind it in any way?
And of course, it was to the interest to any administration to be able to terminate with somebody who was promoting the stability in a country like Bolivia itself.
Now, Che Guevara was an instrumental figure in Fidel Castro's Cuban Revolution. As someone who is Cuban-born, how did you view Che at the time?
He was an assassin, he was an adventurer, he was an individual who had very little regard for life. He enjoyed killing people.
In 1967, the CIA sent Felix to Bolivia to coordinate the effort to capture Che. In the rough and remote scrub forest of the East Andes Mountains, he trained Bolivian Army Rangers and taught them the benefits of utilizing intelligence gained from captured guerrillas. It didn't take long for the team to zero in on the revolutionary, and in October of that year, Felix's unit of Army Rangers, led by Bolivian Commander Gary Prado, moved into operation.
This intelligence unit came back on the evening of the 7th of October with intelligence from a farmer that there were voices at this place called Quebrada del Yuro. Nobody was supposed to be there. So that evening, Gary Prado surrounded the Quebrada del Yuro with less than 200 men. And on the 8th, who happened to be on a Sunday, that's when the firefight started. And Che was faced then, he was wounded on the right leg, and the soldier who captured him told me that at the time that he came face to face with the army, he told them, "Don't shoot, I am Che. I am worse to you more alive than dead."
Che was taken into custody and held in this dilapidated mud schoolhouse in the nearby village of La Higuera.
Nevertheless, when I saw him for the first time, I felt sorry for him because he looks like a beggar. He's a man that didn't even have a uniform. He didn't have any pair of boots. He had some pair of leather tied down to his foot. He was very filthy, and he really looked like a beggar. And it was a tremendous shock remembering that image when he visited the Soviet Union and China, of that arrogant man, see this man the way he looks at that point in time.
Inside the schoolhouse, Felix Rodriguez was the last person to interrogate Che Guevara.
So I stood in front of him and said, "Che Guevara, I come to talk to you." And he looked at me kind of arrogant and said, "Nobody talks to me, nobody interrogates me." And then I said, "Well, I didn't come here to just interrogate you. I mean, I admire you. You used to be head of a state in Cuba, and you're like this because you believe in your ideals, even though I know they are mistaken. I just came here to talk to you." So he looked to me for a while to see if I would laugh. When he saw that I was serious, he said, "Can you untie me? Can I sit?" So I asked a soldier outside. I had to give the order 3 times to untie Commander Guevara, because we treated each other with respect. So the soldier came in, they finally untied him, we sat him on a little bench, and we started talking. Whenever I asked him tactical question of interest to us, he said, "I cannot answer that." But there were points in time that he did, I pinched him, for example, I talk about Africa, and he didn't want to talk about it. I said, "Well, You don't want to talk about Africa, but we were told by your own people that you had like 10,000 guerrillas and they were very poor soldiers. So he said, well, if I had 10,000 guerrillas, it would have been different. But you're right, they were very poor soldiers. And we talk about the Cuban economy, about the different situations. And I asked him why he selected Bolivia. He had three basic reasons. Say, well, one, it was far away from the United States. Second, it was a very poor country, so he didn't feel the United States would have that much interest in Bolivia. And third, and most important to him, he had boundary with 5 different countries. If I was able to take over Bolivia, then it would be easy to export the revolution to Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, all of those countries next to Bolivia itself. There was about a point in time, about half our conversation, he looked at me and said, you are not Bolivian. I said, Commander, who do you think I am? He said, well, you can either be a Puerto Rican or you can be a Cuban. But the question you have been asking me, you are working for the United States Intelligence Service. I say, indeed, I am a Cuban.
The CIA gave Felix strict orders to keep Che alive. The agency wanted to transport and interrogate him in Panama. However, the Bolivian government had other plans for the prisoner.
There came a phone call. And the phone call that I answered, being the highest ranking officer in the area, was 500, 600. It was a very simple code that we had created, was 500 was Che Guevara, 600 kill him, and 700 to keep him alive.
Felix says that on behalf of the U.S. government, he appealed to Bolivian Colonel Joaquin Centeno to keep Che alive.
He said, Felix, my name was Felix Ramos. He said, Felix, we have worked empirically, we're very grateful to you, but these are orders from my president and my commander-in-chief. He looked at his watch and said, you have until 2 o'clock in the afternoon to interrogate him. Our helicopter is going to come several times, bringing food and ammunition and taking our wounded and our dead. I want your word of honor that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you will bring me back the dead body of Che. And you can kill him any way you want because we know how much harm he has done to your country. He said, my colonel tried to make them change their mind, but if there's no changing mind or orders, I'll give you my word of honor. I'll bring you back the dead body of Che.
A short time later, and before realizing his fate, Che posed for photos, including this one with Felix Rodriguez on the left. After learning of media reports that went with the Bolivian government's story that Che was killed in combat, Felix realized there would be no counter-order.
I stood right in front of him and said, Commander, I'm sorry. I tried my best. He perfectly understood what I was saying. He turned white like a piece of paper. But he said, it's better this way, as you have never been captured alive. Then he pulled the pipe from his pocket and said, I'd like to give this pipe to a soldadito, a soldier who treated me well.
Che gave that pipe to Felix Rodriguez and uttered his last words.
And he said, if I can, do you want any message for your family? Then I will say in a sarcastic way, he said, well, if you can't tell Fidel, he will soon see a triumphant revolution in America. Then he changed the expression, saying, if you can't tell my wife to remarry and try to be happy. That was his last word. He approached me, we shook hands, and we embraced.
Rodriguez says he walked out, then heard gunfire. Che was fatally shot 9 times below the neck to appear as if he were killed in combat, in keeping with the story pushed by the Bolivian government, which wanted to prevent Che from ever escaping from prison. Did Castro send him there to die?
Oh, I definitely believe so. We knew then later on that when he was in Cairo in 1963, he had a fallout with the Soviet ambassador. Of course, Che Guevara was pro-Chinese, and the Soviet had no interest of him being successful anywhere in the world because that revolution will turn toward Mao. And therefore, when he was sent to Africa, first of all the weapons were given by Red China, and when he failed in there, he didn't even want to go back to Cuba. And when he finally went back to Cuba, and he was sent then by Castro to Bolivia, the transmitter was broken, the head of the Communist Party retrieved his support from him, and he was totally abandoned. They even took out the individual who was in charge of supporting him out of La Paz, an officer of the Cuban intelligence by the name of Renan Montero. And he was recalled to Cuba with the pretext that his visa had expired and he had a Bolivian citizenship. So he was definitely sent there to be killed.
Che Guevara's death marked the end of his attempt to export the Cuban-style revolution outside of Cuba. But in pop culture, Che is very much alive, immortalized and romanticized on countless buildings, shirts, and posters as an anti-imperialist hero, the symbol of revolution and struggle, an icon.
I believe that eventually people will really see what he really was. This guy was really a criminal. It's a matter of record that you can check that he said many times that if he had the atomic bomb, he would have thrown it over New York. to implement socialism in the United States was worth it, the life of millions of American innocent people.
So you've done some amazing things in your lifetime, having served in Vietnam and fought in the Bay of Pigs. How do you feel about the role that you played in the events leading up to Che Guevara's death?
I think it was an important role. I think it was important to see that we could have stopped someone like him to continue doing what he was doing. He brought a lot of death in Bolivia. And if he had not been stopped there, I'm sure he would have gone to another place. And a lot of people would have been killed there. Like he was responsible for a lot of killing in Africa and other places where he was. So it did put a stop to that.
Another battle won in Felix Rodriguez's lifelong fight against the communist ideals that overcame his Cuban homeland and changed his life forever. In Miami, Florida, Kathleen Walter, Newsmax TV.